It's strange how life can change in just a few years. 5 years ago, I thought I had found the perfect woman at a small bar downtown. Now, I'm sitting here alone, trying to make sense of everything that happened. I first met my wife at Joey's Bar and Grill during a Friday night out. She was there celebrating her friend's promotion with a group of coworkers. The moment I saw her laughing and dancing, I knew I had to talk to her. After gathering my courage, I walked over and introduced myself. We hit it off immediately. She was outgoing, fun, and had this infectious energy that drew everyone in. Yes, she enjoyed her drinks maybe a bit too much, but back then, I thought it was just part of being young and carefree. We ended up spending the whole night talking, and she came back to my place afterward. She joked the next morning that she usually didn't do this kind of thing, and most guys disappeared after one night. But I wasn't most guys. There was something special about her that made me want to know her better. We started seeing each other regularly, meeting up 2 or 3 times every week. After dating for about 6 months, we moved in together, and a year later, we got married. She had just finished college and was working at a retail store while looking for something in her field. Life wasn't perfect, but we were happy. I knew about her drinking habits. She'd often have a few glasses of wine with dinner or go out drinking with friends on weekends. It concerned me sometimes, but I never thought it would become a serious problem. Everything changed when we got that terrible phone call. Her parents and sister were driving back from a family vacation when their car crashed. None of them survived. My wife was devastated. She had always been close to her family, especially her younger sister. They talked every day and had weekly dinner dates. The drinking started getting worse after the funeral. At first, I thought it was just her way of coping with grief. She'd drink to fall asleep, drink to get through the day, drink to numb the pain. She quit her job, saying she couldn't handle dealing with people anymore. I supported her decision, thinking she just needed time to heal. But months went by, and things only got worse. The final blow came when she had a miscarriage 6 months after losing her family. That's when she completely spiraled. Our house became filled with empty bottles. Some days she wouldn't even get out of bed. Other days, she'd get angry over the smallest things. A dirty dish in the sink or a wrinkled shirt would set her off into a rage. I tried everything I could think of to help her. I worked extra hours to cover our bills, went to grief counseling with her when she agreed to go, and tried to keep her busy with new hobbies. But nothing seemed to work. Then one day, I came home early from work and found her kissing our neighbor Tom on our couch. They were both surprised to see me, and while she was clearly drunk, he wasn't. I kicked him out immediately and later told his wife what happened. I tried to forgive that incident, believing it was the alcohol making her act this way. But a few days later, I saw them talking in the parking lot, and she quickly walked away when she noticed me. That's when I realized I needed to take more serious action. The drinking had gotten so bad that she was spending all her money on alcohol, and I couldn't trust her with our joint account anymore. After many long discussions and arguments, I finally convinced her to try rehabilitation. It wasn't easy. She refused at first, saying she didn't have a problem. But eventually, she agreed to give it a try. For the first few months of rehab, I started seeing positive changes. She seemed more like her old self, the woman I fell in love with. She was attending regular sessions, participating in group therapy, and actually working on her recovery. I finally felt hopeful about our future together. I had no idea that this hope was about to be completely shattered, or that the worst betrayal was yet to come. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. The way she'd get dressed up for her rehab sessions, how she'd talk about her counselor with a sparkle in her eyes, and how she started spending extra time at the center working on herself. But I was just so relieved to see her getting better that I ignored all these red flags. Then came that evening that changed everything. I was at home watching TV when my wife burst through the door, more excited than I'd seen her in months. At first, I thought she was drunk again, but she wasn't. She was just different. "I'm in love," she announced, twirling around our living room like a teenager. I laughed it off, thinking she was just in a good mood. But then she mentioned her counselor's name. "Let's call him David." She went on and on about how David understood her like no one else, how he made her feel special, and how they were going to get married. I thought she was having some sort of breakdown. David was married with 2 kids. I knew this because she had mentioned it before when talking about their sessions. When I reminded her of this, she just smiled and said he was planning to leave his wife for her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This man was supposed to be helping her recover, not taking advantage of her vulnerable state. I decided to confront him at the center the next day. When I told him what my wife had said, he acted completely shocked and called her delusional. That's when my wife stepped out from around the corner where she'd been listening. She was crying. But these weren't sad tears. They were angry tears. She pulled out her phone and showed us both a video that made my stomach turn. It was intimate footage of her and David together at some hotel. She'd been telling the truth all along. David's reaction was cruel. He called her stupid for thinking he'd ever leave his family for someone like her. He said she was just another unstable patient who got too attached to her counselor. I watched as his words crushed whatever fantasy she'd built up in her mind. I'd never seen my wife break down like that before. Not even when she lost her family. She collapsed right there in the hallway of the rehab center, sobbing uncontrollably. Despite my anger and hurt, I found myself helping her up and taking her home. The woman I loved, who had already lost so much, had just been used and discarded by someone who was supposed to help her heal. But my sympathy could only extend so far. She had been planning to divorce me for this man. She had broken our marriage vows while I was working overtime to pay for her rehabilitation. The betrayal cut deep, deeper than I thought possible. I knew I had to take action on two fronts. First, I reported David to the authorities. With the video evidence my wife had kept, plus her testimony about their relationship, we had a strong case against him. He had clearly violated professional ethics and taken advantage of a vulnerable patient. Second, I had to make a difficult decision about my wife. She was spiraling again, worse than before. After David's rejection, she stopped eating, barely slept, and started talking about how she had nothing left to live for. I couldn't leave her alone in that state, even after what she'd done. I contacted a mental health facility that specialized in trauma and addiction recovery. It was expensive, but I couldn't live with myself if something happened to her because I'd abandoned her in her darkest moment. The day I drove her to the facility was one of the hardest of my life. She didn't resist. She just sat in the passenger seat, staring blankly out the window, completely empty inside. While she was getting the help she needed, I started working on divorce papers. Some friends told me I was being too nice, that I should have just walked away after what she did. Maybe they were right. But despite everything, I still cared about what happened to her. For years of marriage, plus all we'd been through together, couldn't be erased overnight. The legal proceedings against David moved forward while my wife was in treatment. I made sure to keep her updated through her doctors, as she needed to know she wasn't powerless in this situation. We were building a case that would not only put him behind bars, but also shut down his practice for good. As I sat in my lawyer's office, finalizing the divorce papers, I couldn't help but think about how different things might have been if her family hadn't died in that accident, or if she'd gotten proper help for her drinking earlier, or if I'd noticed the signs of her affair sooner. But dwelling on what-ifs wouldn't change anything now. The court case against David lasted 3 months. I attended every hearing, even though my wife couldn't be there in person. Her doctors thought it would be too stressful for her, but they helped her record her testimony. Watching that video in court, seeing her tell her story without breaking down, made me realize how much stronger she was becoming with proper treatment. David tried to defend himself by claiming my wife had pursued him, that she was unstable and had made up stories about their relationship. But the evidence was clear. Not only did we have the video, but 2 other former patients came forward with similar stories. His wife left him as soon as the truth came out. The judge didn't go easy on him. David lost his license to practice, got a 5-year jail sentence, and his rehabilitation center was shut down. The other staff members were investigated, and the facility was taken over by a more reputable organization. I made sure to get the news to my wife through her doctors. They said it helped with her recovery to know that he couldn't hurt anyone else. Meanwhile, I finished the divorce proceedings. It wasn't as complicated as some divorces. We didn't have kids, and neither of us wanted to drag things out. I left her the car and some savings to help her get back on her feet once she completed her treatment. Some people said I was being too generous after what she did, but I couldn't just leave her with nothing. The hardest part was packing up our house. Every object held a memory, photos from happier times, gifts we'd given each other, even simple things like coffee mugs we'd bought together. I donated most of it, keeping only a few personal items. It felt like I was packing away 4 years of my life into boxes. 6 months after admitting her to the mental health facility, I got a letter from my ex-wife. Her handwriting was steady, not shaky like it used to be when she was drinking. She wrote about her progress in therapy, how she was finally dealing with her family's death properly, and how she understood now that she'd been using alcohol to avoid her grief. She apologized for everything: the drinking, the affair, the pain she caused me. She said she knew an apology couldn't fix what she'd done, but she wanted me to know she was truly sorry. She also thanked me for getting her help and for pursuing the case against David, even after what she'd done to our marriage. The letter ended with her saying she wouldn't contact me again unless I wanted her to. She was planning to move to another state after her release, to start fresh where nobody knew her story. She said she hoped I could find happiness again, and that I deserved better than what she'd given me. Reading that letter brought up mixed feelings. Part of me was glad she was getting better. Another part still felt angry about her betrayal. But mostly, I felt relief. Relief that this chapter of my life was finally ending, and relief that she was finding her way back to being healthy. It's been a year since everything happened. I've moved to a different neighborhood and started a new job. Sometimes I still think about her, wondering how she's doing. But I don't regret my decisions, not helping her get treatment, not pursuing the case against David, and not staying married to her. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that you can't help someone who isn't ready to help themselves. My wife wasn't ready when I first tried to help her with her drinking. She wasn't ready when she lost her family. She thought she was ready during rehab, but she was just replacing one dependency with another. I also learned that loving someone doesn't mean you have to stay with them when they hurt you. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do, for both yourself and the other person, is to let go. Yes, I helped her get treatment and made sure she wouldn't be left with nothing after our divorce. But I also knew when to step away and take care of myself. These days, I'm focusing on my own life. I've started going to therapy too. Turns out watching someone you love spiral downward leaves its own kind of scars. I'm not dating yet, but I'm not rushing it either. When people ask me about marriage, I tell them I don't regret my marriage, even though it ended badly. It taught me a lot about love, limits, and when to hold on versus when to let go. The last I heard, through a mutual friend, my ex-wife completed her treatment program and moved to the West Coast. She's sober now and working as an administrative assistant. I hope she's found some peace. As for me, I'm doing better too. Some days are harder than others, but that's just how life goes. You take the lessons, heal from the hurt, and keep moving forward. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.